Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today's video, we're going to be talking all about how to write a strong law school application. So I've got a couple of tips here for you. Once again, our next couple of videos will be in this empty apartment because I just moved to DC and I'm waiting for my ship furniture to arrive. So bear with me here for the next few videos because like I said, I do batch record, which means that I record most of my videos in one sitting. And the empty apartment is not about to stop me. Okay, so ways to increase the strength of your law school application. Let's just get straight to the point. Number one, and what I think should be the most obvious, is strong writing, right? You are going to law school to be an attorney. Attorneys write, attorneys research, attorneys edit. And that means you need to showcase that you have those skills in your application materials. When people tell you that your application materials don't matter, when I hear people saying that, it literally makes no sense. And I'll give you a concrete example of why this makes no sense to me, because I've had multiple people come to me and talk about this, but you are literally going to law school to be an attorney, right? That's going to be your job. Attorneys write, attorneys research, attorneys have to, if you're a corporate attorney, go through contracts. If you're a litigation attorney, go to trial, right? That's literally your job. So the fact that people would think their application writing or their application materials don't matter just makes zero sense to me, because that is the easiest way to gauge strong writing. That's the easiest way to gauge writing skills. I mean, to this day in my job, one of the easiest determinant or defining characteristics of what they consider or how they know when someone is going to be a strong attorney is by their writing, right? When I was doing my district court clerkship and my circuit court clerkship, how I knew if someone was going to be a good oral argument, be good at oral argument, or be good in trial was based on the brief they submitted, based on their writing. Because typically, if someone's writing is trash, if their brief is trash, I know their oral argument is going to be even more trash, you know? And what a lot of attorneys say is they can tell the skill of a lawyer based on the strength of their writing. And so just when you hear that, when you hear people saying that, my caution, my advice to you is not to believe it, because in the practicing world, you are gauged on the strength of your writing. So why would admissions counselors not be paying attention to that? Even at the most basic level, right? We understand you don't know legal writing yet, but we're talking about your application materials. We're talking about basic writing skills. We're talking about showcasing that you know how to be cohesive, that you know how to use punctuation, that you know grammar, that you know how to tell a story, that you can actually put attention to detail, that your application isn't full of conclusions, conclusory allegations without any substantive information to support it, right? These basic writing skills, and maybe even a little more elevated writing skills. What I want you to understand here is showcasing strong writing does not mean you're just throwing around buzzwords or throwing around, you know, big words because you think it's going to make you a stronger writer. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm actually talking about the substance and the quality of the writing itself, not so much the words that are being used, okay? And so the example I wanted to give to you was, so this cycle being the fall 2024 to 2025 cycle, so applicants applying this fall to start in fall 2025, I've got a couple of re-applicants coming to me who believed this notion that their application materials didn't matter. They submitted their materials for the previous cycle with strong scores and got into not so great law schools, or got into law schools, the highest being somewhere in the 40s, and in some instances, I think the 40s was the highest, getting into law schools ranked in the 40s with no scholarship, right? With strong numbers. Like, again, I repeat, with strong numbers. And when they started working with me and they sent me their materials, I'm just like, well, no offense, and I don't say this, but you cannot submit this. This cannot be what you submitted, because all this tells me is that those scores belong to someone else, you know, or those scores were a fluke, because what I'm reading right here makes no sense, or it's very convoluted, or it's like, it just kind of comes out of left field, right? You're talking about A in paragraph 1, but then you're jumping to D in paragraph 2. Like, what happened to B and C in between A and D, you know? And so that's just one example of a couple of re-applicants who are immediately coming to mind, who have come to me this cycle. Another example is someone else who came to me, who is attending law school this cycle, but didn't get into any of the schools that she wanted to get into in terms of her top choice law schools with an LSAT score in the 170s and a GPA above a 3.7. And again, similar thing. She didn't realize that essentially her application materials matter, right? Especially when you're aiming for these top law schools. It's your numbers, but you also have to showcase these, writing, right? That's what your application materials are there for, along with showing that there's more to you, along with being able to convince the admissions counselors, tell them about your story, tell them about who you are, talk about your experiences, explain to them and show them why you'd be a good fit for law school. All of this in combination is what you need to be considering in order to make sure that you've got a competitive law school application. And the most competitive applicants know that, right? Like, I've talked about it so many times. I don't know that I've actually done a video on it yet on YouTube, but I will soon, I promise. Maybe if you guys tell me to in the comments below, I'll do an entire video on my law school application process 6 or 7 years ago, and exactly what I did there. But I spent about 4 to 5 months on my application materials. I started my application materials before I took the LSAT, before I even had my LSAT score, and then continued going even after I took the LSAT, right? And that's why I tell people all the time, you should not be waiting to take the LSAT before your LSAT score to start with your materials, because ultimately really strong materials, it takes time to build, right? Just like when I'm working, right? When you're working as an attorney, you're not gonna write a really strong brief in 1 week and think you're done. It's not happening. You're not even gonna do that in a month and think you're done. And so, to the extent possible, give yourself the time you need to really write and submit a law school application. So I know I spent a lot of time on that first one, but the second thing that is helpful to help you increase the strength of your application is storytelling. I think this is like just kind of at the most basic levels of writing, of informative writing, of persuasive writing, is storytelling, right? And knowing how to tell your story in a way that's going to show the admissions counselors that you deserve to be at their law school, right? And I had just sent out an email this morning about this, actually, because one of my clients had come to me about saying how she didn't want to write a sob story. And that's not what it is, right? And there's this misconception where people confuse building a connection and building relationships or being vulnerable with telling a sob story. Absolutely not. They're two completely separate things, right? An application that builds connections and builds relationships and tells a story is building a connection with their reader through their writing, right? And that can be positive writing, even if you're talking about an issue or a circumstance or something you went through that wasn't necessarily a positive experience in and of itself. And that's because you're not focusing in on that negative experience, right? If anything, it's the smallest part of your material, right? Of your story. You're focusing on the positive aspects. You're focusing on what came out of that. You're focusing on the triumph. You're telling your story as if you wrote it, because you are, right? It's your story to write, and that's how you're telling it. So the two things are completely different. Nobody's application should be a sob story, right? You want to make sure that you're framing it properly. And again, that's why all of this goes into storytelling. You can literally do whatever you want with your story, frame your story however you want to. And that is what you have to do with your application. You're framing it in a way, you're telling it in a way that is showcasing the qualities, the characteristics, the experiences that you want admissions counselors to know about you, because that's what's going to make you a strong law school student, and that's what's going to make you a strong attorney. Okay, so that's that second thing that you want to do to increase the strength of your overall application. The third thing is to think about and remember that your application should paint a holistic picture, right? So of course you have your LSAT, you have your GPA, you have your application materials, but you also have your soft factors as well. So right, your recommenders, your extracurricular activities, your work experience, all that stuff. Look at everything as a holistic picture. When you see gaps, right? When you see weaknesses, when you see things that you're unsure how they blend together, look at another piece of your application and ask yourself, how can I make up for this gap? How can I make up for this weakness? So for example, if you have a low GPA, where else can you showcase that GPA isn't who you are, that GPA isn't indicative or predictive of what your performance is going to be in law school? And how can you talk about that in somewhere else, right? And do not, Please do not take this to mean that you should be talking about your low GPA or your weaknesses or whatever it may be in your application materials. You are not doing that, okay? You're not bringing up your weakness in every single document or trying to over-explain it. That just comes off as like you're trying to make an excuse. That's not what you're doing. What you're doing is you're thinking about the root cause. So what is the root cause of someone who is a good student, who has a strong GPA, who has performed well, and how can you showcase that? How can you showcase those experiences, those qualities, those characteristics, other places in your application? That is what I'm talking about, right? So this is what someone who is aiming for a top law school is doing, is they're approaching their entire thing holistically. They're not looking at every single piece individually, right? Because when you look at every single piece individually, you're almost guaranteed to miss something, and you're almost guaranteed to take the focus away from you and all your positive qualities and why you're going to be a good student and why you're going to be a good attorney, and overemphasize the wrong thing, right? Because you're looking at everything individually instead of as a whole. The other piece here, of course, is when you're thinking about your soft factors, again, right? How can those come in to help your application? How can those come in to help boost your application? And I see this all the time when I was in my clerkships, right, too, because when I was reviewing those applications that were coming in, you know, there's different pieces of the application that I'm looking at. There's no one, I'm not only looking at someone who wants to be a federal circuit court clerk's GPA. I'm not only looking at their transcript. I'm not only looking at their letters of recommendation. I'm not only looking at their writing sample. I'm looking at everything. I'm making a decision or recommending a decision to the judge based on everything as a whole. And that is your application as well, right? So someone may be weak in one thing, but then really showing somewhere else. And ultimately, it is that holistic view. And if you can approach your application that way, you're more likely to submit a stronger application because you're able to put balances or checks and balances where they need to go in your application. The final thing that I'm going to share with you is remember your goals, right? So I think I've shared this with you guys before, but if you haven't grabbed it, I have a free guide for non-traditional. So if you've been working full-time for over 5 years, if you're 25 and older, if you've been out of undergrad for a while, then I have a free guide helping you visualize or think about 8 post-law school goals. It will be in the description box, but you have to know what, or at least have an idea of what you want your goal to be, because this is going to inform the law schools that you apply to, and it's going to inform how you should be approaching ultimately the law schools that you are choosing to go to. And what I mean by that is, for instance, if you say your goal is going to be, I want to go to big law, then what that means is you're going to want to aim for a law school that places over 50% of their class and have a higher than median. So even if you are median, you could still have a chance at landing that big law job. And then when you're looking at what law schools place that, then you know, okay, well, I need to get into a law school that's at least ranked here or higher to make this goal easier, heavy on easier for me to achieve. And if that's the case, what do I need to do now at the application stage to increase the strength of my application materials, right? Do you need to increase your LSAT scores? So do you need to get an LSAT tutor? Do you need to work on showcasing or overcoming weaknesses in your application? So you need a very strong law school application. And so maybe you need an LSAT coach, me, or if you need a tutor, you can also come to me, right? So either way, when you're thinking about what are your goals, you need to be doing the research on the law schools that are going to make it easier for you to land those goals, so then you know how to approach the law school application process. And it was so important for me to say this because I just remember when I was applying to law school, and again, maybe I need to do that video, how I didn't really think about this when I was initially going through my application process. And it wasn't until I had already applied to law school that I was like, oh my gosh, oh shoot, like I want to go to big law. So really, I may have to do this whole thing again because I didn't approach it how I should have approached it to increase my application, trying to line up with the schools that I really wanted to get into. And like I've always said, the power is in your hands at the application stage, right? I've got clients with 2.2 GPAs in at top law schools. I've got clients with 2.4s, 2.8s, 2.9s. One of my 2.9 clients just landed a big law job. I'm 3.1 client, right? I have clients all up and down the GPA spectrum, all up and down the LSAT spectrum, getting results. So none of that is is a reason to stop you from getting into the school that you want. You just have to be aware so that you can actually take the steps you need to take at the application stage. Because once you're in law school, that may not be the case, right? Once you're in law school, you're graded on a curve and that's not as much in your hands. So I hope this video helped you guys. I hope you take some actionable steps from it. If you're interested in getting law school coaching, then make sure you go to toppingthecurve.com. It'll be down here on the screen and in the description box. You can also grab that free guide I talked about in the description box as well. Follow me on all of our social media at Topping the Curve on TikTok and Instagram. And I will see you guys on my next video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.